All right, welcome everybody. This is a lunch and learn about Passkeys. The idea for this came up because Abram and Will and the Splits team sent out an awesome email a couple weeks ago, just like breaking down Passkeys in a really easy to understand way. And I remember reading it and thinking like, wow, more people, one, should subscribe to their newsletter, and then two, just sort of need to hear this because I think Passkeys they have some steam, they have legs, they're being adopted by a lot of the big tech players. And so it feels like it's a nice combination of like bottoms up and top down sort of meeting. And I think it's important for everyone in the industry to be aware of their pros and cons and what the trade-offs are relative to existing verification methods like passwords, or we're all familiar with in crypto, which is the dreaded seed phrase on a piece of paper in your mom's house. Like we want to try to figure out what the passkey model means for us and how we can use it. I know a lot of people on my team as well have been asking, a lot of our collectors. So Abram here was kind enough to take some time to synthesize that blog post into a deck that he's going to walk through today. We're then going to do a demo of the Splits product, which uses Passkeys. I'll show off a demo of like a more consumer version of a product that we've been working on called View.art that uses Passkeys. And then maybe we can have some time at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to go on mute. I'll pass it off to Abram. If you guys have questions during the talk, just feel free to throw them in the chat and we can handle it at the end.
Sweet. Yeah, I've got a few slides I want to run through. So if there are questions, I probably won't be looking at them right now, but we'll check them at the end. Let me get this set up. Okay. So, okay, Infinity Mirror. I think I should be presenting. This looks good. Okay, sweet. So very high production value. We're going to use Excalibur here and run through it. So quick overview on Passkeys, how Passkeys can safely make crypto more usable. Very briefly, one of the founders here is Splits. We build financial infrastructure for on-chain teams. So this includes very lightweight kind of money Legos like splits and waterfalls that allow teams to route payments to different people programmatically. And then it also includes tools for how do those teams actually manage their on-chain revenue and expenses. We launched in 2022. We've done like 100 million or so in volume, although that number is probably a little bit lower today. Over 100,000 contracts have been deployed across dozens of chains. We're powering awesome teams like Bright Moments, Zora, Protocol Guild, a handful of others. And our mission at Splits is really to help people take control of their earnings. And as we were trying to do this for ourselves, we ran into some problems, right? So a number of months ago, we started earning revenue. Revenue here is like a loose term, right? We have like donations and other things coming in. Revenue on chain can be rather fickle. We started earning it across multiple different chains. And actually what happened really was Optimism's retroactive public goods. We received some, and we need to figure out, okay, what are we actually doing with this? Where is it going to go? How is it secure, right? We had like a multi-sig on mainnet with like a handful of hardware wallets to signers, and it was like really hard to use. And as more kind of revenue was going to start to come in, we want to actually like figure out the right system for this, right? So where's it going? How much are we earning? Who has access to it? And it's really just like, we found it was like still too hard to manage money on chain, either as a team and also as an individual. And for us, the must-haves were it needs to be secure. That was something we were not willing to trade on. It must be non-custodial. We do not want to be banked by some big, public company. Like, we want ownership, we want sovereignty of this, and it needs to be really easy to use. So this was me a few months ago trying to figure this stuff out. Right, this like security, non-custodial aspect, and easy to use like shouldn't be that hard, and yet today it really is. So we started looking around and trying to understand, okay, how can we actually build the system that we want? Because we couldn't find anything that did this for us, right? And there are a few kind of new opportunities, new tech that was coming online that made this, the timing of this, I think, pretty interesting. So more and more L2s are coming online, right? We have key store rollups hopefully coming soon, but the L2s, bringing the cost of transactions way down. We had like some pretty significant improvements to Ethereum itself, right? Like these are pretty non-insignificant that were coming up. And we also started looking around and saw that passkeys were becoming the gold standard for authentication, and not just like within crypto, right? Like I think passkeys in crypto make a lot of sense, which we'll get into in just a second. But Google, Apple, Microsoft, right? They're kind of like promising passkeys as becoming the next wave of authentication, and frankly, it's for a good reason. So get into passkeys, but let's quickly compare passwords and passkeys just to make sure we're on the same page of what a passkey is versus what a password is. right? So passwords are secret codes. I, of course, asked ChatGPT because why not? Passwords are secret codes that you create and remember. You type them in to log into a site or app. The site checks if your password matches what's stored, and if it does, you're in. So that's a shared secret. Whereas passkeys are more secure. They use a pair of digital keys, a private key stored on your device and a public key stored by the service. That private public key pair is really important, which we'll get into in a second. When you log in, your device uses a private key to prove who you are without actually having to type, without you having to actually type or remember anything. So in short, a password, you and the app both store a copy of the password. When you log in, the app checks if both copies match. Alice and Bob both know the combo to the same lock, and they share that with each other. That's a password. A passkey is this private public-private key pair, right? So your device keeps a private key and the app has a public key. When you log in, your device proves it owns the private key without actually sharing the private key, right? So in the password analogy, I'm sending this shared secret across the internet to some service. In a passkey scenario, that does not happen. That secret is not shared, right? So in this case, Alice proves to Bob that she knows the combo to the lock without actually telling Bob what that combo is. She keeps that combo secret. Public-private key pairs are really, really important in cryptography, right? So public key is shared openly. This would be like your public address, right? That maybe you can like point an ENS to, right? And that proves verification. A private key, that stays secret and that proves ownership. And only the owner of the private key can sign a message, and anyone with a public key can verify that that signature is valid. And crypto runs entirely on public-private key pairs. Like this is like, it's not just Ethereum, it's Bitcoin, it's like all of crypto really, right? Like that is cryptography in many ways. Passkeys are public-private key pairs. They have some additional specifications, which we can talk about, but that's really important because when we think about what a seed phrase is, it's largely the same thing, right? And so we're thinking like, hey, is accessible digital sovereignty here? Can we find that when we combine passkeys and blockchains? And unfortunately, our findings were not so fast, right? Like there's a lot of promise, but let's slow down. Let's like understand the trade-offs. So these are kind of how we view the options for holding crypto assets today. You can use passwords, seed phrases, or passkeys if you're coming up, and we're going to grade them on these attributes that are really important to us: non-custodial, secure, and easy to use. Passwords, my friends, are not that great. They're absolutely not non-custodial. If you can click a link that says forgot password, you can guarantee that you don't actually own that password, right? The source of truth is what's on the app server, not what's on your 1Password or written down on a piece of paper. They are custody, passwords are. Are passwords secure? You know, maybe potentially, but like you look at all the phishing, all the data leaks, how easy they are to hack. Like I could have potentially given this like a middle ground, but I went extreme, and I strongly believe that passwords for the average person are really not secure. And are they easy to use? If you use a password manager, they can become easier to use. But oftentimes ease of use and security, right? Like that's a really big challenge, because if your password is like password 234, right, that might be easy to use, but that's absolutely not secure. So password managers do make it a little bit better. Seed phrases, wonderful. They're non-custodial, right? That's great, but they're also pretty scary. They can be kind of secure if your OPSEC is super secure, right? So if you have your seed phrase written down on a sticky note on your desk, right, that's not super secure. But if you have it, you know, imprinted into metal, stored in a fireproof vault or something, right, then that is more secure. So it's kind of up to you. It's kind of as strong as your OPSEC is. Our seed phrase is easy to use. I don't think we have to dive in too deep here, but when the first step is get a pen and piece of paper, you know, that's not a great start. And the next step is install a browser extension. That's also not a great follow-up. So passkeys, right? Are they non-custodial? Not in isolation. This is really, really important. And this is what kind of the next few slides are going to focus on. Passkeys by themselves inherently are not non-custodial. Are they secure? Yes, they're actually like super, super secure, right? This idea of phishing, like because it's tied to domain, I actually can't use a passkey on a domain that it was inauthorized for, right? So if you're going to, you know, instead of Amazon.com, it's like Amazon.com, right? I can't actually submit my private information because it's not the right domain. They are as hard to lose as maybe your phone is, which is still potentially problematic. And they're really not hackable in in that like you as a person are not coming up with like this passkey, it's not like passkey 234. And yes, for the most part, they're like really, really easy to use because all of these like big, the big four are all integrating them natively into their platforms and into their operating systems. Scorecard passwords are not great. Seed phrases are a little better. Passkeys on the whole are pretty good, but this piece is really important to us, right? We don't want to compromise on this. And so what do we do about this? How can we make passkeys more non-custodial, more self-sovereign? So Josh Stark, I'm sure you guys have probably seen, or many of you have seen this essay around atoms, institutions, and blockchains. He introduced this idea of hardness, right? Hardness is its ability to make the future more certain in very specific ways, and blockchains create this hardness. And so we want to increase the hardness of passkeys, right? So passkeys have this inherent domain risk. If the domain goes offline, your passkeys will stop working, right? If keys.splits.org, the government comes in and says, hey, you need to shut this off, those passkeys that you have associated with keys.splits.org will not work. So that's an issue, right? And so our solution here is passkeys should be part of your auth stack. They should not be all of your auth stack, right? And so if someone's saying, hey, passkeys are like this panacea, it solves everything, only use passkeys, I would question that. I don't think that is the right approach. So when we think about our auth stack, and I'll run into it and I'll jump into a demo in just a second to give you a sense of how we're thinking about this, right? The three address protocol, if you're not familiar with that, I would definitely check that out. The idea there, it's like Punk 6529 talks about this. The idea is you separate your assets into different accounts, and those accounts should have different security and accessibility trade-offs. Right, so you might have like your vault, your cold storage, and then you have your like hot wallet that you can connect to other sites. But you don't ever connect your vault using Wallet Connect or any third-party apps to that other app. Use multi-sig, which is essentially two-factor auth with social recovery baked in. And then for us, what we strongly believe in is use a root signer that are actually hardware wallets, or there are seed phrases. That root signer is not something you need to interact with day to day. It's really hard to use. It's not fun. No one wants to do it, but it is the like break glass in case of emergency. That is where the self-sovereignty really comes from. And so this is like our auth stack. This is what we're building the Split Smart Accounts product around, is where you have the root as seed phrases, the multi-sig based on seed phrases, ideally hardware wallets. That is your break glass in case of emergency. That owns your savings, your vault. That uses passkeys, and that's fine. And the savings then owns all these like different operating kind of like daily, checking accounts, stuff like that. So unfortunately, this is still where we are, right? We're like between, is it too hard to use that I never do it, or is it too weak to actually trust, right? And so you want to kind of thread this needle. And before jumping into the demo, I think that this wasn't obvious to me at first, but as I've gone down this rabbit hole, I really strongly believe that Web3 security is just web security at the end of the day, right? Apple takes this stuff super seriously. And what ends up happening with your iCloud is Apple actually takes custody of your iCloud account by default. And if you want to self-custody, your recovery keys can be a randomly generated 28-character code. It sounds a lot like a seed phrase to me, right? And that is like the best, that's the state of the art, the way to solve it is Apple's like, hey, if you want to take self-custody of your account, print out this seed phrase. And that is what actually grants you custody instead of Apple custody. Okay, so let's jump into a very quick demo. I'm going to do this. Live demos are always fun. I'm going to do this in an incognito window. I don't have MetaMask or anything installed all this stuff. I have already created an account. I'll enter in my email. Because I've already added a passkey to my account, I can just use, I think you guys should be able to see that, right? Oh, no, you can't.
Yeah, we actually can't see the pop-up.
Okay, well, let me just change this real quick and present my whole screen.
Living life on the edge.
Yeah, I know. This is window, entire screen. All right, get out of here. All right, we're back. So I just real quick, what I did, I just logged in, and I already have a passkey associated with my abram.splits.org associated with this account, so I can use Touch ID to sign in. Great, I'm signed in. And so I'm part of a number of different teams. I'm going to jump to the Splits team for this demo. In the Splits team, actually, let me show you this first. So on my personal account, I've added a bunch of passkeys. I have my iCloud, my Chrome, my YubiKey. And then on our team side, we have multiple people as owners or as members of our team. And so if I jump to our Smart Accounts product, we've got some funds sitting in our smart accounts. Again, we're following this 3-address protocol. So this treasury is a 2 of 3 multi-sig. In this case, the signers are YubiKeys. They're hardware devices. They're still passkeys, but they're hardware devices. So I'm not walking around day to day with the YubiKey that's stored somewhere safe. And this is where we keep the vast majority of our funds. And only 3 people, kind of the more senior folks on the team, are signers on this. Whereas if you compare that to one of our operating accounts, right, this keeps fewer funds and there are a lot more signers. And these signers are actually much easier to use than a YubiKey, right? So you can see I've got my Chrome passkey, I've got an iCloud passkey. I think that's pretty much what everybody has on this. And so you can have different accounts that have different kind of security measures, both in terms of what the threshold is, but then also like as a team, how do you enforce like, okay, this account, we just want YubiKey hardware passkeys as signers and stuff. So we've got a handful of different assets sitting in this account. I'm actually going to demo a feature that we just pushed to prod, I think this morning or last night. And I'm actually gonna like submit an on-chain transaction without having any wallet installed, any MetaMask, anything like that. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna just put a little bit of funds from this operating account into something else. And we're actually gonna send this new account a token that I don't have. So we're kind of like just launch the ability to like it's kind of like just-in-time assets. So I'm going to send some OP tokens to this account. I have no OP tokens, but let's just say I want to send them $3 worth of OP. Now we're going to say, okay, what token that you do have do you want to swap into OP? And this is the type of experience that we can build with smart accounts, because you can kind of combine and compress all these transactions and just require one signature. So let's put a little bit. We'll do ETH. Hit submit. This should so I can prove this transaction, and this will prompt me for a passkey signature. And essentially what I'm using that private key to say, hey, I do in fact own this public key, and that public key is a signer on the smart account, and that transaction was successful. So you can see we're working on the previews. Matthew's been giving us a lot of feedback here. Cool. That's a very, very quick demo and how we think about passkeys. I'm going to hand it over to Phil. It's probably a speed run, but yeah, we can jump in. I didn't talk at all about, as a developer, what it's like working with passkeys. That's been an experience as well, which we can get into. But yeah, maybe I'll toss it over to Phil and then pause here.
Maybe any questions for Abram? First of all, thanks for putting that demo together. Round of applause here. Thank you. Cool. Greg has a question in the chat. What exactly is stored in the passkey?
So we're stored in the passkey. So you have a public key that's associated with a domain. So as a passkey issuer, you can say splits.org or app.splits.org, right? I think Coinbase, the way they have it set up with their smart wallets, is like keys.coinbase.com is the top level like issuing domain, and that means that passkey can only be used at that domain. So you've got the public key, you've got the private key that is created by the device or the passkey issuer. Then you'd have like a user, like a UUID or something like user identifier. And then I think there are a few other data points that are saved, but those are kind of like the big 3. So you can say, okay, this passkey is for Abram's user assigned to this domain, and it only works for Abram's user on that domain.
Other questions for Abram? All right, cool. In that case, I will jump in. So a quick note just on this before we go into the demo. I think Abram's presentation was a great example of how passkeys can take place of an existing authentication system, right? So you can have an EOA, you can have hardware wallets, for an extra layer of security. And passkeys sort of give you a way to easily use accounts as long as you have these sort of more root access things secured. What we're interested in at Bright Moments is being able to bring crypto to people in person. You really feel the product feedback when you're standing next to someone directly next to them and they're like trying to mash the button 100 times because they want to get in the door to an event. And so we feel this pain pretty acutely, and things like, hey, please pull out your laptop and plug in your ledger and make sure you update your Chrome. And then, by the way, your firmware is down, so here's the Wi-Fi. We lost them. They're gone forever. And we really want to be able to make sure that when people come to our events, they're able to get a wallet, they're able to mint something, maybe without even knowing that they were interacting with crypto. I think that's the holy grail. And so we recently finished sort of a big world tour. We went to all these different countries and tried to onboard people over the course of a few years. And that ended in April. And we've been thinking, hey, what can we do to help bring more people on chain? And so we've been working on a product called View.art. So View.art is a way for anyone to take all of these assets that they've minted over the past 3 years and display them in physical settings. That can be your external monitor, that can be your TV at home, that can be the iPad that you bought a couple years ago but never actually used but can't bring yourself to sell because maybe one day like you'll use the Sketch app on it. I think we all know how that goes. And we built this from the ground up actually to use Passkeys. So before we integrated any other sort of authentication, like it started with Passkeys. And I think we're going to start to see this emerging set of apps where they have this assumption at the core that, hey, Passkeys exist. They're easier to use than email from a user flow. And they give you this added benefit of having a wallet built in. So, you know, you can sort of have this assumption where, okay, anytime a user comes to my app, now they have a wallet. You can do a whole bunch of things with that. I think we've all seen the benefit through Farcaster. And so what I'm going to do is share a window here, and I may ask for some help in the audience at one point in the demo. Okay, so I'm looking at this on mobile. I think this is good because Abram's demo was on web, and so I'll sort of show a mobile version. So I'm running iOS here. And this is just me visiting a site in the browser, right? So this is view.art. And I was able, we're sort of still in beta. We're launching next week. But for now, this is the onboarding flow. So when a user first lands on the app, they show get started. And we've sort of gone out of our way to give them this primer text, which is just to give some context. I hope eventually this can sort of fade into the background, just like it does with email and password. You don't really need to explain that to people anymore. But for now, we're sort of trying to be extra explicit around what we want the user to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click I'm ready. And notice here the domain at the top changed. So this is what Abram was talking about. This is keys.coinbase.com. So this is the issuing domain for the Passkeys that the Coinbase wallet team has been working on. And you can do a few things. You can sign up or you can sign in. For the flow today, I'll show sign up, which is just the act of creating a new passkey. I've had a bunch of conversations with Wilson. I really appreciate that they're using sort of traditional Web 2 language here. Notice it doesn't say create a wallet. It says sign up. That's really nice. That's what is going to get people to understand this flow. So I'll click sign up. And you can see here that it's going to generate a passkey and it triggers Face ID. So by default, Coinbase has chosen to name the passkeys based on the date. That's arbitrary. You can name this whatever you want. They could name this Coinbase Wallet 1, Coinbase Wallet 2, right? I think the date is nice because if you're like me, you have a bunch of passkeys. Don't be like me for wallets. Try to keep a couple. I just have like 40 on my dev account, and I'm sure it drives them crazy. So I'm going to click continue, biometrics. And then within the app, we actually use a library called Sign with Ethereum. So why do we use Sign with Ethereum? Well, in order for our website, right, view.art, to know that I'm actually the owner of this passkey, the wallet ending in 7C7E that it secures, I need to sign a transaction. So Sign with Ethereum is sort of a standard way to do that within the Ethereum ecosystem. So we just listen for when the wallet is created, and we immediately issue this Sign with Ethereum request afterwards, and then we kick them into the app, right? And so now the user has a wallet under the scenes. All they had to do was do their Face ID. They didn't have to type in anything. They didn't have to enter their email. They didn't have to, pull out a piece of paper or install a browser extension or interact with crypto at all. But they have a wallet under the hood, which allows us to do some really interesting things, right? So in this case, now in the flow, I can create a channel. So if there's any recommendations in the chat of what the channel name should be, otherwise I can create some random ones. Maybe I'll do one of these. I'll do Bogus Cocoa. So I'm going to create a channel here. And I can search wallets. And so in this case, I'm going to pull in some assets from an ENS domain that we control. I see some familiar faces here. I'll pull in some of our artists from Buenos Aires, like Delirious, Lolo. Cool. I'm going to add a couple items. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste this link in the chat, right? So I just created this under the hood. This wallet now controls this URL. Eventually, we're going to issue this name on chain as an NFT. So this wallet 7C7E that was just created will own an NFT all under the hood. Didn't need to do anything. Didn't need to load it with any ETH. If we did want to load it with ETH in the future, We've been looking into Stripe's on-ramp, which is really nice. You can pay with a credit card or Apple Pay and put ETH in the wallet. And so like the tools are coming together. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and share it. And so now you can see, I'll just go ahead and open a new tab here. Or if you guys are following along at home, you can see that I just created this new channel, and I'll share this. I'm actually going to share it in a different browser. One sec. Let's see where it went. Cool. And now I'm able to share this. I can control with my phone, switch between the items in the channel. And so our hope here is by creating these sort of experiences where people can come in, they don't really need to understand what a wallet is. They can sort of explore different artwork that they enjoy. They can pull up different things and see things at their home. We want to make, you know, all of this media that we've been creating and putting on chain more accessible than, hey, you need to go install MetaMask and then go to OpenSea and then load your wallet with ETH in order to even bid on something. And then probably you'll see it as a thumbnail. And so we're really excited about Passkeys. You know, I think our use case was all about getting things set up as quickly as possible for the consumer and getting out of the way. And we've been really excited about that. So that's the end of the demo. I don't know if anyone else has any questions or thoughts or maybe experiences on the dev side of working with Passkeys. Abram, I'd be curious to know how it's been for y'all.
Yeah, I'll just, I guess, answer that question first, and then I'll pause. The dev side has been tough because it gets complicated because Passkeys are tied to a domain. If you have like test and prod and maybe another database, right? And you have like your for sale preview links or whatever, right? Like being able to use the same passkeys across a lot of different like staging environments gets very complicated. And the way that some passkey providers like Chrome Passkey Manager or Password Manager, they tend to overwrite the previously created passkey. And so there are some restrictions that we can put in place to prevent that from happening. And also, like, most people aren't, you know, creating passkeys for us on like our dev and staging and prod, right? Like that's typically just the team. But just as developers, it's actually made it pretty complicated to figure out what that right flow is. And we're actually kind of reworking some of that right now because yeah, back in like early April when we were first getting started on this, we did have this issue where we pretty much lost access to like $40 because we added passkeys and overwrote the previous passkeys, and we didn't understand that that's how Chrome did it. And obviously, once you have like the root set up with the seed phrase, multi-sig signers and stuff, it's like the ultimate source of control. Like you won't have that issue. But as we've been trying to build this out, like as developers, it's actually just been challenging. And also, so there's that piece of it on the technical side, but then the other piece is like they're just new, so there's like not as much documentation, and like using new technology, like you always just run into like edge cases that you know, you're opening like GitHub PRs or just like trying to understand what's going on, and it can kind of be challenging.
Yeah, I'll also just speak to that a bit. And I saw there was a question in the chat which I want to answer, which is, you know, anytime the friction on something goes down, people are going to do it more. And there has already been a fragmentation within the Ethereum ecosystem, especially around having different wallets on different chains with your liquidity split across Base, ETH, Zora, Optimism, Arbitrum. Like, I am embarrassed to say how many wallets I have in my MetaMask and Coinbase wallet account. And now with Passkeys, that issue has exploded even further. And so I do think there's going to need to be some amount of coordination between the players in the ecosystem to make sure that we're not pushing the burden of this onto users. I think we've all had that experience of trying to manage logins. Like, if you want to see how bad it is, ask your parents to remember their password to a website, and it's like horribly frustrating. And so I don't want that to be the end state of crypto. And so I do think there's some work to do here. You know, Greg, you mentioned, is there a way where we could do it, basically build our own smart wallet? The answer is I'm sure we could, but just in the sake of velocity, we decided to go with the implementation that the Coinbase wallet team provided. You know, it also means that if other apps are using keys.coinbase.com, those users don't have to generate a new passkey to maintain the same wallet, right? Because it's the same domain. And so I do think there's going to be a couple large identity providers here. I'm not sure if the role of that is going to be at the app layer, because otherwise every app will have its own wallet, which is just going to I think, in my opinion, harm some of the promise of the interoperability in Web3. But there's also obviously privacy trade-offs that come with sharing financial and social data across applications as well that I know the base team is thinking about. So. Any other questions or thoughts from folks who have worked with Passkeys or seen them? No? All right. Well, I just want to give, can you give an example of how View can work with the Splits Teams account? That is a hot collab that's going to have to wait until the next call. So coming soon. Wait for our co-branded merch on that one, right, Abram? Cool. Thank you guys for taking the time today to join. Abram, thanks for pulling the presentation together. If this was useful, I'm hoping to do more stuff like this in the future. So
Yeah, I would love to.
cool. All
Sweet.
right.
Thanks,
Talk to y'all
everyone.
later.